down I have to listen for. So I want to say, welcome everyone. This is a continuation of our 9 a.m. July 21st, 2025 Board of Commissioners Strategic Planning Meeting. So we did continue this from this morning to now. Excuse me. So I do want the record to reflect though, that we do have 3 commissioners that are present for this meeting. The continuation side of it, Commissioner Kearns, Commissioner Ward, and myself. So I think that's, I'm looking to legal. I think that all I needed to legally get, put forward, right?
Right.
So, okay, now we can get going. So welcome everyone and thank you for being here today for our budget discussion. We know that your budgets are gonna be due, here in a few weeks. And so I just feel like it was really important to have us all come together and have the commissioners here to have us all talk about kind of where we're at, why we're here, position of the county's in. When I first became commissioner back in 2018 was when we started the county leaders meetings quarterly to really talk about budget, to bring everybody together because when I was an employee of the county in 2015 and 16 and 17 with Vicki, you know, I could see the silos that had developed and that were there. And that there was departments that hadn't talked to each other, didn't know, department heads didn't even know other department heads. And so I felt it was really important to do this and have us come together at that time because we knew we had budget constraints that were going to be going on. You know, this is not the same as what that was, but because at that time we kind of brought people together and had people in small groups that were in areas that were of motivation to really talk about how can we do things differently, what can we look at efficiently. And so my hope is that over the course of time, as these have all continued, even though maybe not in that manner, as we do have these budget discussions, that you can be talking amongst yourselves to figure out how to make it work and come together. I know with the Becca funding going away, we just had that happen. You know, I see Tori and Tim right there. You know, those were discussions that everyone had, you know, girl, we don't have the funding, the state's taking the funding away. So what do we do with how we make it work? So we can do what we need to do statutorily. We may not be doing everything the way we'd like to do it statutorily, but trying to make sure we're doing what we have to do with the funds that we have. So that's kind of where we're at now. And so I just want to say thank you for being here and taking the time to be here with us. It is important, you know, notice the commissioners. Commissioner French is away on county business. And Commissioner Walter, her daughter's at nationals, so I think it's important as we all talk about family that she's there. But just know that it's important for all. We see it as important that we're here with you, having these discussions endlessly, just like what we do with all of our citizens, because as we know, you know, as we try to have, you know, a flatline budget of the county, it's going to have an impact on our citizens. You're going to get those calls. We all get those calls. So we really are in it together to figure out how we move forward in the best way possible. So I just want to say thank you for showing your support and knowing that we're here showing our support, that it is a collective county issue that we have to figure out together. So I don't know if either one of the commissioners would like to say anything else as part of the introduction.
I think Commissioner Kinney speaks for the whole board here. Just thank you all for being here, being part of the process. And you know, there's a lot of work left to do between now and the first week of December when we adopt the budget. Thank you all for your participation.
Yeah, it's really nice to see everybody in person. So thanks to our host, Public Works Department, rather than just kind of a little digital Zoom screen. Just want to thank you for your time and also for all you do for leading your departments on a regular basis. There's just a ton of really critical work getting those public services for the citizens, the services that they expect from us. And I said this at the last kind of budget, or when we came to the team meeting, that these are not decisions that we want to be faced with financially. So we'll get into some of the details about that. I've been there as a line attorney, you know, in public sector, having hundreds of cases on your desk. And someone, you know, you have a caseload and then someone leaves. And the caseload gets reassigned and the stack goes from here to here and it's all legally required. And so taking one fire hose and now making it two. So have a lot of sympathy for every one of the staff members who's really working hard. And hopefully we can find some creative ways to make the best possible decisions under the circumstances.
Thank you, Bill. And I think I would just conclude with saying that, you know, when we started this back in 2018, we didn't know we were gonna have some issues facing us. We didn't know that we were gonna have COVID, that then led to CARES money and ARP dollars. So I think that this really is a continuation of what happened then. We just have these other funds kind of coming in the middle that kind of helped us and I would say saved us. But now we're in kind of the perfect storm of the federal government isn't going to put the money out like they have in the past. The state government doesn't have the funds that they've had in the past. And we don't have the funds that we've had in the past. And so it is kind of this perfect storm that's kind of happening as we move forward. And we'll see on the first slide here. You know, that I know you guys have all seen this 5-year projection. So we are looking at a $20 million deficit, you know, as we project it out for next year. And that's a reality. And as you know, as we continue to look forward, you know, as I know Commissioner French talked about it long before I even got there. I mean, the counties don't have a lot of ways to raise revenue. I mean, our revenue raising abilities are very small. But our expenses continue to escalate. And so that's the situation that we're in, and that's when you're seeing, you know, the red lines continue to go up. You know, where our green line is pretty stagnant. You know, again, during COVID, we have those CARES funds and we have those ARP dollars that we were really able to then look at that as opportunities to infuse as much as we could in the county to build that strength. I mean, that's why work days happened with ARP dollars. I don't know that we could have made it happen with normal county funds. So we were purposeful as commissioners and as the administration in trying to think of what are the strategic investments that we can make with those dollars that will help us for the future too. So anyway, so I just say that because we don't have the continuation of revenue coming in today. And so we really do have to look at, you know, projections of 2030, you know, almost $70 million. It's not sustainable for any of us. I mean, I talk about, as president of WASAC, you know, looking at what the state is putting back onto the counties that the state used to fund, is going to end up bankrupting some counties. I mean, they're not going to be able to handle the salary increases, the risk management increases, cost of construction, you know, just all those things cost of our criminal justice system. I mean, we're seeing several counties are really having to have hard discussions about can they continue and what is that going to look like. I know the electeds that have commissioner, fellow electeds in other counties. I mean, I'm sure they're hearing the same things from some of these smaller counties, but it's just there's not the funding. And more is being pushed, like I said, from the feds to the states to the counties. And we just don't have the means to increase those funds. So I'm gonna make sure I'm getting back to my talking points. But I mean, I guess that's really, you know, the scenario that we're looking at, and I don't see it getting better. I mean, even if we could raise all the taxes in the world, our citizens can't afford it. So we have to be, you know, we're really trying to balance what the two look like. You know, how do we do what we need to do, but how do we, you know, do it in a time of you know, fairly flat revenues, but rising expenses, because during COVID, we did see expenses went up and the salaries haven't gone up. You know, costs of assets went up. I mean, all those things, just those that we're facing, construction costs. obviously goes out here. As our boilers go out, right, we've got new standards, that we have to meet. You know, what does that look like and how do we do it? And that's what we're facing, you know, and with help with Scott and his team. How do we do that? What do we do? Because it affects every department. And we do believe every department is so important. But we've also got to look at it from the whole picture as to how we make it happen, which is why I'm hopeful that you can all be talking to think about ways that together we can figure out some of these areas that we can think creatively, think outside the box. I know we have in the past, I know we're all basically as lean as we can get. Because I mean, it was that way back in 18. So it's just, I'm hoping that we can all think through what this really means and how we all can help get there. So the next slide. Is. Just make sure. Is that, you know, as we look at projected salary. So we have projected salary increases of 7%, the salaries and benefits is not the salaries, it's interest step increases, it's the. We put into the contracts, but it's also the benefit increases, the cost of doing medical insurance is getting higher. So those are the things that we've talked about, but, you know, we can't have them go down, it is what it is, so it's the continuing cost is going up. Sales tax and property tax are the biggest revenue sources, and those are, you know, staying flat. In the past, we've seen like over a 3% average increase during COVID, it was even higher. Initially, and then it just kind of bottomed out. And again, as we're seeing people not wanting to spend as much money because they're starting to feel that pinch. You know, as we've seen taxes go up on our gas tax and even things. People are feeling the pinch at home, and so they're not spending as much as they used to. And so that's where we're seeing that flattening out. That's why we as commissioners are always talking about what is the economic development that we can do, because that is what helps feed sales tax for us. And so that's why, you know, it may not be a department within the county, because that department is what we do with GSI. There are our economic development arm that we contract with them to do that for us, as our ADO is what we call it. That we can't just unfund everything there. They may be an outside agency to us, but they're doing things that we need to try to promote and make it so we can always have additional sales tax and property tax. And it, you know, it's just where we're at. So current year sales tax increase, we have at 1.1%. We're seeing that come in right about there. We were hoping it might be a little bit higher, we were hoping that we were being conservative in our estimate. But we are pretty much on target for that right now. And so financially, that's kind of where we're sitting with the county. I know it looks bleak, but I think we can get there. I think this is where we just have to dig deep, because I don't want to just cut things to cut things. I want to be purposeful in where we're making decisions. So as you know, it's hard for us to raise revenues, and this will talk about that, and Josh will talk about some of the expense side. But we've got to be purposeful, we've got to be thinking about what can we do and how can we do it differently, to make it so we're not at $70 million deficit in 2030. No, Jeff or Scott, do you have anything you want to add to those two slides? Okay, I'm gonna then turn it over to Commissioner Burns.
All right. You know, so Commissioner Cuny laid out the situation of where we stand here, what we're looking at for next year. And so, you know, some of the things that, you know, we're all gonna be faced with here is, you know, aligning the expenditures with the county revenues. It's really looking at that level of service, looking about what do the revenues allow us to do. You know, we all want to do more, but we're faced with the reality that everything we do costs money here. And so we're gonna have to bring those two parts of the equation in line with each other. really wanna continue to focus on, something you've heard from us for years harping on, and that's looking at what are those mandatory services, looking, there's the must do's and there's the nice do's. And we're in a situation where we can't really afford to do the nice do's. We're gonna have to look at what is each department statutorily required to do, and that's what we're gonna have to deliver on. That this is one of those instances, I know it's cliche, but you hear about, but we need to be thinking outside the box, and that's all of us. That's us up here as commissioners, that's you in your respective departments, but that's just, again, the reality of what we're faced with here today. Attrition is another big thing. Our number one expense we have here is labor, and it's looking at those vacant positions. The earlier we can start in this, in looking at positions, looking at it today, rather than waiting till the end of the year, it's gonna be a whole lot easier. We have already started looking at attrition, looking at positions that have been vacant for extended period of time. We've eliminated 70 positions, just looking at that. We have some positions, correct me if I'm wrong, that have been open for years. Here, and those aren't the rolling positions that we're constant. Those are an identified position that have been vacant for years. Here are some of the departments that have already started, looking at attrition and have been able to eliminate, some positions. The number I was told today, we're up to 79, so, you do see some that are identified as individual departments. A couple of them have eliminated 2 positions, but those are the things that, are difficult, we know that. It's not easy, but those are the things that we're gonna have to take a deeper look at, we're gonna have to explore, and again, the earlier we start on this, the easier it's going to be, to use attrition, as the tool, rather than letting individuals go, after the adoption of the budget. And so, just again, wanna encourage folks to participate as much as you can. I know you guys have been on the department head elected official leadership calls, thank you for that. Thank you for participating, staying in contact with our budget department, looking for innovative ways that we can help tackle this, because it's gonna take each and every department for us to make this work the first week of December when we adopt the budget.
So I've been asked to talk about the revenue side of things, just a couple kind of context setting pieces. Number one, I think I forgot to mention in the opening that I think part of the reason we call this meeting, we're gonna give some context. We really want to hear your ideas and try to have some level of dialogue across the management of the county about where we might go as a group and within your individual departments. And then as it relates to revenue, as Commissioner Cooney referenced, we have some limited tools in the toolbox on revenue. We don't have the tools that the state has as a county. And then also keep in mind, I'm gonna talk about each of these briefly, that initial chart of a $20 million gap we're looking at next year that on a structural basis grows out to much greater than that over the next several years. So it's all in the context of that as well. For this budget cycle for 2026, all of these revenue options are options that the board, I imagine, will have some level of analysis and discussion about. They do require the board to approve that. The first one that we often hear about is the 1%. That's the 1% general fund property tax increase. For the general fund, it amounts to $700,000 for next year. So 700,000 plus potentially the banked capacity, which is essentially by law, our property tax levy is limited to grow 1% per year in total. And if the board doesn't take it at a certain year, you can maybe go back and take some of that capacity in a future year. So that's available to the board, adds up to about $1 point something million for the general fund property tax increase. Helps, but in the context of a $20 million deficit, does not get us close to solving The other one that is an option to look at is the road levy shift. In next year, that could be up to 7.5 million in new revenue. My understanding is that takes some of the banked capacity from the road fund and property tax levy and allows the board to kind of move that capacity into the general fund. So that's where technically where that would come from. Some limitations on that. First of all, it has not been used every year. The last time it was used by the board was voted on in 2021. Historically, it has been used to go, generally half back to the roads fund. And half to public works related projects, so this building is a perfect example of that. It doesn't necessarily, at least according to the historical practice, help us too much on the general fund. Because it has really been, because it originates from the road fund as an authority to tax. It has been thought of as should be benefiting the roads or public works. And I don't think we're aware of any, at least recent history examples of where that's been kind of applied to help out, support the general fund, in an operational way. It's also, and that's something that, as a new commissioner, I've been kind of learning the difference between general fund and the other funds. And that projected deficit is a general fund deficit, that's kind of the problem that we're looking at. And then, of course, the difference between a capital money and operating, right? So this building was funded with one-time monies from the road shift, from the sale of property, for example. But at least according to the ways that the county has always looked at that in recent history, it has been viewed as one-time money, not operating and supporting public works and the road fund. So that's an option to be aware of. The other one, this is a new option. The legislature just passed a new law that allows for a councilmatic or councilmanic. We're still debating the terminology. The word of the day, yes. We've been asked to an ACO, it's still unclear, but councilmatic, $16 million, it's a 1/10 sales tax increase. Councilmatic means the commissioners by council can vote to do that, versus putting it before the voters. It's at least councilmatic for the first couple of years of the authority. It couple limitations on it. First of all, it has to be approved by a majority of the board. It's a new tax increase on sales tax, and we're about to pinch of citizens already. That's a challenge. It also has some eligibility pieces to it, which still need to be explored, whether the county would be eligible. And even if, a couple things to think about. First of all, it only can go towards criminal justice purposes. So there are some limitations on the uses of those dollars. And then even if the board was to take such an action, we've heard about the slow growth of sales tax. It isn't catching up with that overall gap. So we still have a structural problem, even if the board was to do that. And then I think just the last piece to consider or to be aware of is that I'll speak for myself, that my view would be when we as the board would be considering imposing a new tax, councilmatically, regardless, we would need to go through the process of showing that we are being good stewards of those dollars for the reason that you emphasize. So options to be considered, but it doesn't get us out of the hard work, sadly, of trying to figure out how to be as sustainable and efficient as we can within limited resources. And then Commissioner Cuny also mentioned as well, just the federal uncertainty in particular. We just heard from emergency management this morning about a federal funding source that is being potentially cut off, that puts 2 of their 7 positions at risk in that department. So that's the environment that we're dealing with, but we wanted to make everyone aware of these as well, because there's certainly pieces of the puzzle to consider.
It was clarified for a second, on the road shift, when we did the road levy shift, so it was pretty passionate from some of the commissioners as we did it, and since it's coming from the road funding, what it does do is instead of property taxes are only on the citizens and unincorporated. It's the entire county where it's that too. So the city of Spokane, the cities within Valley, and everybody gets that same tax, so that's why it generates more money. That way, and so, since we know that the road fund is its own fund, and it doesn't have enough to do on roads. Maintenance operations that it needs, that's why, 50% went back into the road fund and 50% went into, we did go into the general fund, but to help with capital items. And so, yeah, it was just one time capital items. So some other departments did benefit from that as well, other than the neighbors. So just to be clear on that. I think with all that, then we're gonna turn it over to Scott to bring up some departments and talk about what our options are.
Yep, so before we get to that, I just want to share a couple of things. We deal with a lot of nomenclature and wording and whatnot. We've used the term projections. How do projections compare to budget planning? Projections are our best estimates based on the known information we have, the known data, the known trends. We project out what we think we're going to be. We've started to get into a better practice of looking out beyond just 1 year. General fund is important because decisions that the board makes today has impacts long term. So while we use the term projection in terms of our 5-year, their current projection for 2026 is our reality. So that's really what the commissioner is using for our budget planning for this year. Those revenues that we will be budgeting for are, as the commissioners have said, they're fairly flat. Historically, we have 3.9% increase on a 20-year trend line of our sales taxes. We're trending about 1.1 right now. And each month it goes up a little bit, when it goes up above 1%, it goes down in a subsequent month under 1%. So we're not seeing any sort of lift that's occurring in sales taxes. So the revenues that we are planning to budget on this year, we have to have expenses that match it. We have to have a balanced budget that is statutorily required. The other thing we've talked about is, that's what adjacent to this is target budget expense lines. The target is your assign. That is, again, because we believe our revenues are going to be very flat, we must have flat expense budgets across the department in order for the commissioners to balance their budget. So just want to add some clarity. When we think about projections, yeah, they could be soft and squishy. Could it change? Sure, we don't have a crystal ball that's going to happen in 5 years. The closer we get, 1 year, we feel pretty good about where those projections are going to be leading for our budget guidance. So, commissioners talk about expenses and revenues, opportunities. There's also risks. We have a number of risks that aren't even built into our budget today. We have the disconnect between the federal government and our state laws. And those are causing real risks around our ability to continue receiving grants that fund not only our general fund, but our special revenue funds, our transportation funds. And not knowing whether or not we're going to continue receiving those, the impacts could be even greater than we see today. So $20 million worth is what our budget, if we do nothing, $20 million is our deficit going to 26. So we must do something. On the economy side, we're seeing risks with uncertainty on consumer spending. We're seeing uncertainty on how that might inform on sales tax growth, people's willingness to spend money. We're seeing volatility continue in the interest rate environment. Interest rates are important because oftentimes companies look at interest as a means to potentially borrow. When interest rates are high, borrowing slows. Their expansion and growth of their operations, their organization slows. It means that our commercial property taxes and our new builds, stuff that lead to the additional revenue, are uncertain, and it could be going down. New housing starts as well. They're all very intertwined with what interest rate environment is occurring at the time. So the other thing I would highlight for your consideration, each and every one of you look at your departments. And everything that your teams do and that you do are very important to our community. And you advocate for maintaining the level of service, the investments that are being made today. The board has to look across 25 departments within the general fund and make decisions and choices within them. They don't have the luxury of just looking at one department. They have to look at all of them because they have an obligation to balance the budget at the end of the day. So just keep that in mind when they make decisions, not because they don't think highly of what your teams are doing and value what your teams are doing. But there has to be trade-offs, because if you're going to invest higher beyond what your assigned budget is, they have to then make choices about which departments get less from what they have this year. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through. And so we really want to have some dialogue, observations. What are you all seeing? Ideas you've come across, and kind of seed that. We're gonna bring up a couple of departments to talk about what they've been doing already. So first of all, we'll start with Kevin in IT. He's gonna talk about how he's been looking at his budget and things that he's doing, planning on doing creatively to help meet the assigned budget that he has. Can I talk from here? Yeah.
I'm Kevin Norris, Director of IT, for those that you don't know me. First thing that happened this year was, well, every year we have to look, our world changes so quickly in IT that we have to evaluate the people we have. And we recognize the positions that we really need to change, and we've done that along the way. But the first thing that came up was noting that we had an accounting tech that deals with accounts receivable, building internal and external funds and accounts. And with Workday, that position was no longer necessary. So we had the discussion, very good, kind of hard discussion at first with this person, that we had no need for that position anymore. She was not technically skilled or programmatically skilled to work within our office. We jumped in with HR to try to find her a new home within the county, and we were able to do that. She was, from time of first discussion to working in a new department, less than 3 weeks. So that was the huge success. It allowed us to eliminate a person from our budget right now. We then had a retirement. We promoted to fill that position. And then that position that was promoted out of, we reclassed that down to a tech position, which we would all love. We all could use a new tech, and believe me, in IT, we see that need with the new Sheriff's Training Center, Monroe Court. This building is all being more of the footprint our techs have to provide support for. Having the 7 techs we have is a real stress, but that position is on hold right now just to see where we land with our budget. With our new budget, we may lose that position. We're aware of that. We also had another person leave our department, and we looked at, this is one of the things we recognized early on, was that this group within our department, we have 2 people in this group, they were not classified correctly through a move that had been done years ago. They were positions that really didn't reflect what they did. We were able to, with HR's help again, make a new classification that better reflected that. We're hiring through the request for hire approval process, a person to replace that person that was that left, and also reclassing another position into that new classification. So that helps. We have retirements coming up at the end of the year. I'm retiring. We have 2 other retirements in 2025 and 2026 in the first half of 2026. One is Barry, the cable guy, you probably all know him. He's retiring about the time that I am. So early in the year, and then we have another retirement in May. So what do we do with those positions? We feel that, especially for Barry's position, we may need to request something there. The other one, we're trying to work and see if we can do between now and the end of the year. So when that comes up in 26, we might be able to do something. But if we hired, in my position, if we hired from within and didn't go outside to hire, I could see us, just the future look here, I could see us filling my position, moving a manager up in our department. And then eliminating the manager position at the end of the day, that's another significant reduction, staff reduction for attrition. Various positions, we'll talk to do that with, I think, then my position, if we hire outside, I think our management structure needs to stay the way it is. Because that knowledge will still all have to be there along with getting the new director up to speed. Those are the things that we have done so far. We also, over the last year, along with budget's help, we've really looked at grant opportunities. And they look promising. It looks much bleaker now, with the opportunities that are there or not there. Probably the big concerns we have in our department is tech M&O. Tech M&O for our department is not just tax, it's all of the software and some hardware contracts and agreements that we maintain within our department for the rest of the county. We have between 80 and 100 different agreements that we have to honor. Many of those are multi-year agreements. None of those are going down in price. The only way that we can reduce the cost of those is either to renegotiate, which we've done a few times successfully, or figure out a way to eliminate that software, which we've done successfully as well. And we have more opportunities there with Workday. We're going to be eliminating NeoGov. We're going to be eliminating Questica. We're going to be getting rid of finally our PeopleSoft maintenance agreement that we still have to pay for. So those are the things that we've done. Sean came up with a couple of ideas, and Sean is the guy. He's our money man. I have concerns about this. He has great concerns about this. So between us, I think we're moving in the right direction. And anything that anybody can offer us things that maybe you don't need more from a software standpoint, or maybe there's licenses we're paying for annually for things that we can reduce. Please reach out. We'd love to hear.
Thanks, Kevin. And one of the things too that Kevin started earlier this year, which not necessarily on the people side, but on our operational cost side, is implementing a one device policy. That one device individually, you may look at that and say, that's only $1,000, right? It's $1,200 for a laptop or desktop. Across the county, Kevin's team looked at this, and I want to say it was.
It was total if we could get rid of it.
Yeah, up to $400,000. That's real money. And so looking to make sure we have to have the technology we need, let's be smart about not having too many devices that we don't need necessarily. So thanks, Kevin. County Clerk Tim Fitzgerald.
Sure.
Yeah.
Most departments that are like mine are 96% people. So to make cuts with all the people, not equipment, stuff like that. So that's always a challenge with that. Well, Commissioner Kurtz talked about is the best approach to hiding vacancies. I have some senior folks retire. And so we're gonna leave those positions vacant. The challenge for me is to make sure I coordinate with Victoria's office, the council board best president, and the prosecutors who are actually with the courts. And I'm communicating with them, so I don't impact them, but I can impact their officers with cuts I make, and I'm calling out in relation to what they have to do. So a lot of my cuts deal with areas that are solely responsible in my office and not where I'm attached to the other offices on how to help them. So vacancy was our first approach with the retirements. We had very senior people retiring as a great advantage, so they didn't get hired step 1. You lose step 13, and that dumped it to several $1,000s in pay. And we're gonna return that money back to the county general fund. Because I don't need it, because I have a lower paying employee in that position, so I can keep bringing down my general fund that way. Third thing to do is modernization, on modernization on issues to make things as efficient as we can. When people are doing all this, 2 big things we did working with Kevin's team, we moved our entire legal record to digital archives. Why is that good for us? They do all the work, they make all the copies, they send us the revenue directly. And I would have staff making hundreds of copies a day on documents. Digital archives does that for us. So that was a modernization thing that worked out well. They're trying to fire, same thing. People are not coming to the office, ordering hundreds of documents. we do about 2,200 filings a day. I got half of that electronic now, the other half will come shortly thereafter, hopefully soon. That eliminates staff doing all that kind of work also for us. And then the last advantage I have is in the clerk's office, a lot of funding comes, or did come from the state, in restricted funds. But there are some restricted funds, I think most offices have restricted funds they deal with. So I have funds that do legal financial obligations. And the state said, we will pay you to do that work. But keep folks out of collections, don't share it, and do it with just your staff. So we have staff paid with nothing but state money for legal financial obligations, they've been taken out of the general fund. And I'm going to this restricted fund, I mean, I keep the fund up, if the state stops paying next year, those positions go away. And the same with the surcharge. I took 2 of my folks out of positions that do archival work. They're gonna go into the surcharge fund, the surcharge will pay for them, they're being pulled out of the general fund. So that would be another deduction, it's like 5 deductions out of the general fund right there. But again, if the funding stops, or the filings don't come in, or if that's, if the court waives too much of the money, then, that will hurt some of the funding of the revenue sourcing, but these are the risks that I think we gotta take a look at. To make sure the offices can operate without putting folks into the general fund, find another way to fund them.
Thanks, Tim, appreciate it. Mike Sparber, you can share something as well.
Yeah, sure. And began the process as these folks in front of me know a long time ago, 3 or 4 months ago, but it started with me. Leadership starts at the top. Or did evaluation of my office and there was a position that I felt that could go away with sufficient help, and then we were changing some of that work and so luckily Rebecca had to put a capacity in her schedule, so I did let one FTE go away, and I'm an office of 3, so 1/3 left. So it was difficult to say the least. I've known these people since for 14 years, those are hard leadership conversations. And then with the jail, I gave Dawn kind of a list of things this long, of things that I thought were potential. A good evaluation of what we have to do statutorily and what we don't. And then we'll look at those, reductions in some of the services that we provide, some of it's optional, some of it's not. Shifting some of the staff back early to address some of the overtime shortages that they had. A reduction in the fleet, they found the fleet went down over his feet. And then not tackling some positions that we typically have filled, working with Pat and Tessa on some of those positions have been open for, years. You haven't been filled and identified those as well. Regional services, working with Aaron, it potentially means a reduction in staff. And it also means that maybe we stop providing services on weekends and holidays for a reduction. But then all the good answers are gone. Making some tough decisions now, The MD's office was the same way, reduction in staff and a reorg of your internal office to do reallocation of some of the services they were doing. And then I'm still working with Health for Defense. And I'm also working with the public defender on looking at strategies. It will be similar to what I've done here. So this is the tough role of being a leader. Is this part of it? It's the hard, hard conversation with folks. I really would, ask you guys to look operationally. What can you change internally? What could be done? One desk, centralized desk, whatever you can do for those services. Everything I worked on now. In this process, what are these processes going to be eliminated, streamline, move around, and try to, make some improvements in the process area. And then, just remember, there's space, there are those spaces there's families behind those spaces, and I know, from personal experience that, you just have to really evaluate the balance, and I guess that's where I started. It was not easy, but I got a big jump on it early on, so.
That's great, thanks, Mike, I appreciate it. We'd like to open it up for what other thoughts, ideas, observations each and every one of you have, if you're online, raise your hand and Rebecca can flag one of us, there's a comment online. I anticipate there might be a question on what about reserves? Can we use reserves to help us in this situation? There's different levels of reserves, different categories of reserves that the county has. You go from restricted, which we have, the commissioners have no of those are restricted for only a particular use. We have assigned reserves, which have been set up and committed for a particular use in the future, whether it's next year or the year after. You have committed reserves. A lot of those are to help make sure that we have a sound reserve level. Should the county commissioners desire to go out and bond publicly, there has to be reserves that allow us to get an interest rate that's competitive in the market. And a lot of our credit rating, we have a very good credit rating, very solid one. This county has worked on for a long time. A lot of it's based on our committed reserves that the commissioners have set aside. The commissioners have a policy where reserves are only intended to be used for one-time purposes, not for ongoing operations. All you have to do is read the news, watch the TV news at night. Jurisdictions with made choices to pay for ongoing operating expenses out of their reserves, which is then dropped into the reserve, which is then challenge their credit worthiness in the public domain for future bonding. And they haven't made the hard decisions to bend the curve on the expenses. We have around $32 million in what we call unassigned, unrestricted unassigned reserves. Sounds great, right? Well, we have a $35 million campus infrastructure project that we're already underway on. The commissioners are evaluating different ways how they want to fund it, whether it's cash, whether it's a combination of cash and debt, or whether it's debt only. Well, any level of debt is going to require debt service on that, so we have to be able to identify ways to be paying for that. That's the big ticket. We've got the auditor, assessor, treasurer that has an $8 to $10 million need to, not unlike PeopleSoft. We were on PeopleSoft for 30 years. They've been on a system for probably that similar time, and it has to be replaced. We've got sheriff's vehicles. We've got records management system that we have to invest in. There's easily another $11 million, if I'm not mistaken, in capital needs, even beyond the 35 million. So there is not enough reserve to even cover our one-time capital. So yeah, that was a question I wanted to at least get some answers out there for you to contemplate. There's oftentimes an unknown with, well, reserves, and there's, again, the commissioners have been very fiscally responsible and stewarding those funds and making wise choices around the use of them so that we don't get into a situation like many other local government jurisdictions have gotten into. So with that, just any observations? Thank you.
I just want to follow up on something that Steve probably said. Yes, if somebody does have a brilliant idea, be sure to discuss it with everybody else in that chain, all the stakeholders, the people who are the providers, the people who are your customers. Because although it may be something that has positive impact on your office, it could tank somebody else. And we're suffering that right now in the state agency. They were told to cut, so the Department of License with no lead time whatsoever is no longer sending out vehicle license renewals. They're going from a letter, we've got to do a postcard of these. That postcard wasn't gonna have anything on it. They tell us which vehicles being renewed, which meant we were going from literally 20 seconds or less of a scan to 3 to 5 minutes of the estimate, which would have just completely shut us down across the entire state. All 180 offices, 307 agents, we were impacting both miles down the lines. So a brilliant thing for Department of Licensing, they say that you hundreds of thousands of dollars and maybe we put us out of business. So it's those kinds of things, nothing that dramatic or drastic here. But the other thing I want to point out is one of the things that Tim brought up is talking about the digitization of his records. That did not happen overnight. we need to have some ability to do planning in the long range. The auditor's office has been paying for that digitization since 1992. 30 years later, it's finally done. So it's that kind of thing where hopefully we can take that long, because nowadays, but anyway. So we need to have some ability to sit down with whichever partners need to be there and talk about long-term planning. That may only be 2 years or 3 years. But what's the point of trying to get started on something when there's no guarantee you're gonna be able to finish it? And that unfortunately has been a hallmark here at the county. Brilliant idea, let's go do it, everybody's excited. And then within 6 months, it falls apart because there isn't a 3-year commitment to make it happen. So that's just, something as we're bringing ideas forward. There needs to be an evaluation process, can we commit to this for X amount of years? So that we can finish this project and we can put the savings. Or get the improvement in the process in. So just after so many years here, just a few observations, really, I've gotten it right.
A lot of years of experience to bring it there. While the rest of you are thinking about other ideas you have, Treasurer Mike Bolts online has it. Something he wants to share. Let's see.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Scott. I just want to, I think, Scott, your assessment's 100% correct on some of this bigger issues in terms of grant, the state law, the state budget, that there's not going to be, let's be honest, the state hasn't been the friendliest to counties to begin with, and I think it's going to get worse. Their budget's unraveling a bit. And I just want to point out, underscore one thing you talked about is the fuel prices and some of the things in Washington, the sales tax growth. One thing to think about is when we're paying like 70 or 80% more, 80 cents more for fuel in Washington than, let's say, Idaho, that's money that people would normally spend on stuff that would find their way into stuff that would be taxable activity generally that's getting kind of siphoned off. So that's a big hit. I think you guys did a great job on forecasting that. I mean, I used to do that stuff at STA. I would have been very cautious too, and surprised it's that low. But I think that's the reality we live in. Some food for thought too is, and I don't know if you guys ever considered looking at PEB. But we looked at that at STA, moving the benefits package away from a self-insured model at the county level, dealing with multiple vendors and trying to segue into the state. Now, full disclosure, when I looked at that at STA, Commissioner French and I have a different recollection. He was on the board. I spent a huge amount of my time doing the analysis on that, and would offer, I would be very interested in helping out if there's an interest to even, take a look at that if that's a realistic pathway. But it did save us a significant amount of money in benefits. Part of which is that the premium share is, I think I'm paying about double to be in the state as selecting the county plan as far as premiums, but I do believe that the program is a little bit better, and then the enticement for negotiations I think could be access to retiree medical. It's non-subsidized, but it's still a fantastic rate that you pay as a retiree. So if there's an interest, I think that's a very viable way to save some real dollars, both in terms of the number of internal staff and then our direct out of pocket. And then you get out of kind of the self-insured model has its own costs and dynamics to it, as I think anybody who's been around that knows. So that would be something that I would like to, throw out and offer my, I'll knock off my knowledge from like 15, 16, 17 years ago, whenever I did the work at STA, and take a look at that with y'all, and know some people in Olympia that could help us out and at least answer some of the questions if you have any, or if you're interested.
Thanks, Treasurer Bolts. It's a great idea, and those are the kind of ideas that we need. I joke with my team a lot. I have a lot of ideas, but not all good ideas, but they're ideas, right? So some of them have been evaluated before, some of them have not. So even if it's outside your department, if it benefits the county as a whole, let's look at those things. Let's see if they can have some long-term positive benefits for us as we're looking into the next 5 years. Who else has some observations, ideas to share?
I have a small, tiny one on what we're spending money on, it. I have a little professional, and this is probably a tiny amount, but. I have staff traveling, and then they may not be, for example, our staff that have to go over to Academy, you know, when they want to travel over on Sunday, maybe it's Sunday. Late afternoon, yet are getting paid for breakfast and lunch while they're at home. So I don't understand that, I don't know how much travel goes on in the county, but over the course of the year. To me, it's just that, why are you paying public funds for people to get at home? Because we are paying for breakfast and lunch there, we're paying 70, so under the GSA rules, first and last day is 75%. So that's what we're using. If the board wants to change that and say it's. We want to pay 30% or 33% from first and last day. Of per diem, we can do that. The reason we went to per diem is because accounting for all those receipts is a complete and utter manpower suck. It's a huge amount of administration, but you get one way or another, I don't know. Okay. Yeah. It's like you get the people from that, we have only paid the real, like, your travel. So we made the switch to GSA first and last day, 75%. I think that might have been 2 years ago. Sometime in the last 2 years. Before that, the traveler had to indicate what time of day they were. And sometimes travelers were really good at that. And so then we've got travel reports going back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth. So, yeah, it may sound like it costs a little bit, but in the end. The first and last based on GSA to 75%. Is a lot faster, smoother, cleaner, administratively. It's a lot less of a hassle. When I get back, it's the workplace, you can find this. Yeah, we're gonna make some changes, thank you for the travel, that will. Streamline it a lot more than you expect. Except for the fact that the approvals are still gonna go through that many people, that we can't change, that's. Yeah. Yeah, the exact approvals are still gonna have to stay the same, but what's being approved and what is being approved is gonna change us for that. It's probably gonna take us a couple of months to get everything totally worked out. I'm giving you the worst possible estimate, and I'm hoping to get it done a lot faster than that. I know it's already has it done, thank you. Well, it's a learning experience, and we're finding things that we can do better because of it. But it's just, we just have to get in there and actually understand how the system works, which is another thing, as we learn more about the system and what it can do. We are finding things that we can do differently. And that is gonna take some effort to make the change and then to do training. So you'll probably be coming back to the board every once in a while saying, okay, we found this particular process we can change, but it's gonna take a change in policy. That travel is gonna be one of those things.
And Brian, say, thanks for that question, so I think it's important, if we have those feelings that something seems to do, or why are we doing this, we should be asking those questions. And that's time to do it, and get the answers to why, and we'll figure out why we're doing it. I know the sheriff's office is online, but working hard to change what it looks like with the sheriff's office, which the city is Penn Valley, and their contract. It's this crazy contract that we've had, we're just trying to come up. And the simpler way to do it is cost effective, that is gonna get within a small percentage. So it could be over and then one favor or another favor, but if we can do those things, it's just gonna be effective and be more efficient. But it's really asking the questions that, is why is it taking so long to suddenly adjust that contract? Why is it 5 years? It's just those things that if you don't ask those questions, even on the small thing, you don't know the answer to them, that area that it's not, we're not crazy.
Well.
Yeah, very well fixed.
All right, we go back online, Pat Nichols, you had, something to share. Can't hear you, Pat.
Kat, it says you're unmuted, but my guess is something is wrong with your microphone, because we see your lips moving, but we cannot hear you.
How about that?
There you go.
Got it? Okay. Sorry about that. I just want to encourage the idea of OPM. There are a lot of state and federal grant opportunities out there. So helping our budget by doing things with other people's budgets is always a popular thing in my world. I also think leveraging the great reputation we have at Spokane County to have partnerships throughout the county. In vet services, we partner with other entities that are receiving federal funding in order to do more. Those things that we talk about that are obviously, we want to focus our budget on those things that are mandatory and statutorily required. But if we still want to do those nicer to do things, if there are funding opportunities through grants or other programs that are out there, I think it's important for us as leaders to be aggressively seeking out those opportunities to expand our reach.
Scott, great observations, and you're doing some of those things in vet services right now. Additional ideas, things that folks here want to share or online? While you're thinking, I'll just share one more thing. This morning, the Fisher Prince mentioned that our Department of Emergency Management was in talking about some of their budget needs and highlighting the statutory obligation to provide emergency management services for our county. Counties have that obligation statutorily. Mr. Kearns raised a question around understand the statutory requirement. Is there a defined level of service? Timeliness, how much you do, what you do? And the answer, I think, is really no. So the observation was, while we have a lot of statutory requirements to do things, where levels of service aren't defined, it may mean that we have to change our levels of service. We might have to take longer to do some certain things that our public has historically become accustomed to. Doesn't feel good, but it's just the reality that we're in. Doug in Parks is working steadfast on his budget that's been assigned to him, that's leveled last year. And he is evaluating different service level changes. And as we think about during my time in local government, public safety, transportation, and parks are typically the most commented on services by our public. And while Parks has GMA, Growth Management Act's obligations to have certain parks open space per citizen, the levels of service aren't prescribed. So he's looking at, and we'll be sharing with the commissioners, different options for adjusting those levels of service. They will have impacts on our community, and there will be noted, but he's doing the hard work to look and propose different ideas for the board to consider.
More of a question, Scott. So last year when we presented our budget, I think by the end of July, we presented a balanced budget. And then we had like supplementals, like, do we want to continue doing these things? And we went in front of the board, the timelines a little fuzzy on. I guess I'm asking, what are the next steps on that? Because like, we might have a suggestion, we might have to eliminate work. It's a big drain, including the fleet and everything else. But if the board doesn't want to do that at this point, because there's other community reasons, to benefit the community. Then we have to go back, back to the drawing board, kind of like trying to figure out, well, how far do we go now? What are the next steps after we present our first budget?
Yeah, so great question. What Jeff and Tessa and team have sent out all of you is when you submit your budget back, you're going to outline some of the things that you change or adjust in your budget to meet what your assigned budget is. And in there, the ask is that you identify those things that were, not gonna say easy, but you looked at, you said, yes, we can do this, right? Not huge impacts. There's going to be some others that you have to make adjustments on that will have impacts. Either internally, operationally, externally to our public. We're asking you to identify those and prioritize. If the commission, if the end of the, during the roll up and during their budget deliberations, if we find that there are additional opportunities for the commissioners to make decisions to invest in, whether it's because we're under our expense projection or slightly over our revenues, that sort of prioritization will give them the ability to look across all the departments and make some choice to where they think the most important investments are to make, should there be additional dollars available. So it's really important that you all highlight those in terms of what is the activity, what is the cost, so that we can, they have a really clear path decision making process. Great question.
And again, so the timeline on that portion of it is. So for supplementals, or I think you're calling from the board and testify on those supplementals and asking for additional funds for certain things.
Yeah, so you'll be submitting your budgets, I believe, the first week in August. In that budget submissions where you're going to be sharing what the adjustments are that you're making, and then a prioritization. And then we will be, the commissioners will be having fairly regular Monday meetings where the departments are coming in. And because of the kind of across the board, everyone's experienced the same thing, flat budgets. I would anticipate many of you will be asked to come and present your budgets. And that's going to be an opportunity to share. So during August, September, and October, those sorts of presentations and discussions are going to be going on, along with capital as well. Capital is a big piece, and Commissioner Jordan talked about road levy shift and capital needs and one-time uses. And there's a lot of them within our county that we still have to figure out ways to solve on the funding for. Everyone's online? No? We didn't have a time limit on it, so
Well, I've got one question for Kevin. Sorry, to be on the spot, but when we were talking about looking at your contracts and renegotiating things versus eliminating, can you talk about kind of the evaluation process you went to figure out whether it was worth it to pursue?
Yeah.
Something like that.
A good example, and Sean might be able to speak better to this, he's the one that really broke this. At an ACES conference earlier this year, that's for city and county IT managers across the state to go and gather. We heard that some folks were like us, not happy with how much we're paying for Microsoft support on an annual basis. That's something we have to have, but it's something that we really don't need to pay Microsoft for. Someone else can provide that support. And how much do we save by? About half, about 25,000 a year. And that's just one book. There's other things that we shorten the terms of what we need, because we don't know if we need that product for 5 more years. We know we need it for 2 more years. Let's tone down what we're agreeing to here and do that. In some cases, we look at the number of licenses that, do we really need 300 licenses for this product, and we get 5 or 100, and maybe that shrinks down the cost significantly. And then also eliminating applications within IT. We've eliminated all of our internal training agreements that we had with different agencies or organizations, because our people are very adept at doing research themselves, and we have some great training things that we can take advantage of with some of the software companies we work with already. So we've eliminated those. There's probably more, but if that gets you, and then systems eliminate other systems. New systems can replace an older system and some ancillary systems. For example, we won't need Questica. we're not using it now. NeoGov's gonna go away, and those are because of Workday. There's other applications similar to that. If we get to a point of replacing, casing, the prosecutor system with Carvel, we see half a dozen to a dozen applications that will fall off that we have to maintain. If you look at what we charge departments for programming services, the departments that have the applications that were built in-house are the ones that are paying us significantly the most money for support. The ones that have applications off the shelf are much, much cheaper to maintain from our perspective, because it falls into the hands of the departments that know their system, know their data to administrate the systems. That's what we want to be. Our programming days are coming to a close. Doug, you don't need to share that with any of our programmers right now. They kind of know it, but I don't think they might be saying that at this moment here, but that's a fact. And we need to really look at that. That's why we've looked at taking these people that were categorized as programmers and don't do programming work and creating new classification with them as well. There's some hard things here, but the one thing for IT is that we have everybody convinced that we're working from a place of sufficiency. We'd like to be operating from a place of exemplary, but we can't quite do that right now with staff. But we can operate sufficiently and keep everybody happy with the services that we provide. Our customers are all of you. It gets real dicey if we get to that point where we have to operate from a point of scarcity. That's what we're trying to avoid. With software and with staff.
One other just question, and I don't want to keep people, but I was just curious to put on the table, are there contracts that for services that certain departments have that they share across multiple departments with, I don't know.
Code and water, please.
Yeah.
There's about 50 of them.
Zoom, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
I don't know how. There could be students there, how that's evaluated, but just a thought.
We think, we at least see some that has come through for approval, where there's. Oh, I think we should combine some stuff here.
So just so you know, yeah, the Zoom contract, that's been talked about for a good 3 years. Pelican, I think it's been talked about for at least 5. Somebody. Yeah, okay, so one. We need somebody to do it. So we don't have enough people in purchasing to be handed all this responsibility to go do the contracts, because they're just barely able to survive to keep the rest of the departments going through requisitions, purchase orders, and contracts. So that's part of the issue. If you want improvement, you've got to put the resource into the project to create the improvement. And you've got to make the commitment and not stop a third of the way in or 70% of the way in. So again, this has been the county's problem. Everybody has a brilliant idea. Somebody has to be tagged with it. And then it needs to be reported back to who's ever in charge of that person. And that just has never happened. I'm, Ashley's the one who, because she's been here just for a long time too, and has lived through this numerous times. The copier maintenance, same thing. That's been going on since I made the recommendation back in, I believe it was 1993 as the internal auditor. So, project, just accountability, assigned to somebody, follow through, give it the resources.
For Zoom, I've been tasked with that, and it's been not a priority project for me. And unfortunately, I haven't made it a priority. I'll try to make that.
Well, we did that last year with our Armory Farm. Remember I briefed you guys on how we changed the whole contract with us to trigger everybody on the Armory vehicle and changing companies to save like $25,000. Again, one company to do all 4 offices, 2 pickups, not 5 different pickups during the day. That's the right way to do it.
That's, it's not, I'm gonna go to, Victoria, once, but it's not uncommon, I mean, for organizations that have grown over time, they lose sight of these things, and it's not a priority because we're doing okay, but it takes a commitment by not only the investment in a resource to look at these things, but by each and every one of you, when we need to reach that decision, it's like, please help us all get on board with this as well. So Victoria.
I was just gonna add to the water conversation. There are a couple of spots in this workhouse that have those amazing actual water fountains in the disposable station. I have no idea the cost of those, but if there were more of those accessible, I don't know why anybody gets to hold water. That would just be something around there.
I agree, and we've been in conversation with Gil around how we deploy more of those things. And how to filter what you invest in that, and there's a lot of opportunities in case we do that. Yeah.
We try to put them in when we can, but we've been doing that under our budget, so. We do see the need for them, because we're replacing old equipment. But it's some of those little, just the ones we use the horse funding units, those are a lot. And they can range all the way up to, 7 to 10,000. Depending if we ever need to bring on any lines to hold the whole yard, but we are trying to slowly, as we get things into our budget.
Lori, you had another.
Yeah, I just kind of want to back on something that we've talked about as far as these cuts and the impact on some of the departments and workday. I mean, there's a lot of things around the workday. I'm not the staff. I believe in my business manager largely, 100%, but because of workday, it really impacts on that workload. And these efficiencies that are being done are great at that one level. But I just hope you guys understand the impact that they have on the people. My staff involved in workday are getting emails from these other departments that run in the morning on Sundays, on consistently. We're putting up a lot of shelters. People in this county that do for a long time. And I hope you understand that impact and that. So to ask for these significant budget cuts at a time of a significant software change within the county. My counterpart of our county said, now you have to hire more staff. So I just, I'm not sure. We're aware of that impact. I know it's talked about around here, not much is shared. But trying to get to work done is difficult when there's cuts and work piled on these other departments. And I'm not saying anything about the departments. Some of those are not even maybe office. What about the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, they're working? The core budget office, holy cow. I need stuff from them, can't. If I would departments do stuff as that, then they have to actually use filing on that. So I'm gonna get 8 meetings, and this is just for the human capital stuff. I had 8 meetings all of a sudden in a week on my calendar. And then I go in there. I've been for 34 years, I'm not 34, it is brief. And I'm trying, and then I realize I can't do 8 meetings in a week. And so then people visit fall through, and it can be successful. So I know that's, a little bit of a event session, and maybe the board calling. Do you guys understand the impact of what's going on with departments around work?
So I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I know it's a big deal. We've been in that much work for this station. So yes. I would say we do have to make it successful because I have been as an employee on the other side when we brought in the program, it's still not successful. We spent $300,000, $1 million on something. And because it wasn't being done, we couldn't make it work the way Spokane County wanted to make it work, even though it's going to be a much better system for us eventually. We feel it, I'm used to it. And that's what we can't do here. And so and I know the answer.
Yeah.
But it's just,
I don't know if there's one, I
I appreciate you hearing
that, just as busy as everybody else, but if I can encourage you, I just, this one means it's a different environment, like, they not speak this form, but they speak individually. And so we can, I guess, then get to some solutions and help for some of these now to make this successful. We all, yes.
I'll help you out on that one a little bit. Where it's been with me, it's actually been the dialogue between the super users for Workday to the people that know nothing about it. And every time I run into a situation on it, it's a whole couple days of learning curve. And I guess for my clerk and my accounting technician, I think they share their frustration with me. And I think that's where, but I'm gonna muddle through the process, and I think now that the payroll portion has been delayed out a little bit, it's given us some time to breathe on the purchasing portion of it, but it really, I think, going forward, I'm a lesson learned kind of guy, because I've been a lot of projects, items that we do, things that we do good, things that we don't, so we can learn from our mistakes. And I think for us, it's been the amount of information that we received about using Workday, I think was very, very limited. And I still think we run across items that we still need clarification.
Thank you.
Okay. There's nothing else. Should we close these comments?
Well, you guys don't.
So once again, thank you, for your participation. You know, I think it's great to get us all in the same room, to hear feedback, to regularly give updates on sort of where we are as far as the budget writing process, what the reality is that we're faced with. So again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for participating. And, I assume we'll have a few more of these before the end of the year or something similar. If not, just wrapping these into our, the regular department head elected officials Zoom meetings. I mean, whatever's easiest for folks, and that's what we wanna, help facilitate. But again, thank you all for, participating with today.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I know you're all busy. I recognize my question was kind of about the thought process of pursuing different ideas that might result in savings. I also recognize for the departments that are 90+% people, you know, it's not the same calculation, but I think it's been a good discussion about ideas. I appreciate the range of things from the more challenging to the maybe low hanging fruit on some of the savings that might be available. So we invite you to be in touch with us. Look forward to seeing your budget ideas, and we'll just continue to do the best we can to work it out. So thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, I would say that I just want to thank you all and thank you for being here. It's to hire me just for hosting this, because we've been excited. This is a great opportunity for all of us to see what this gives our maintenance space is. And if people need to reserve it, maybe sometime they can talk to Pat, just because I know we're all limited space. But I really hope that, again, this will give you guys an opportunity to really take them to we want to help. It's not gonna be easy for any of us. But the more that we can cross departments, start talking about what are the things that can be done differently. Because each department individually is going to be able to survive this, you know, it's like we can't keep doing everything the same that it's past. So it's like the really is going to be that cross departmental discussions to figure out what we can do differently to it better. So that's my hope. And you know, we do want to hear the ideas and thoughts. As you know, the general fund is, you know, over 65% in homelessness. So we see a lot of people there. It's like, how can we do this differently to still provide the service we need to provide with our CWs? But is there ways to find efficiencies? Obviously, continuously, so that everything that comes to mind for you. You know, I was talking to judges, you know, that's that is why they did spend the money to get, you know, prosecutors and public defenders hired. Because we were so far down that that was killing our system as a whole, which affects what happens in detention services to, detention. And it just is all those things, and it's like one piece has a ripple effect on so many different things. And so I'm really hopeful that that ripple effect, we can come back together and see what's other pieces that we can try to help make it more efficient and effective for all of us. You know, whether it's between the business office, you know, just all those things that we comment and to do interact, so we don't realize the patient too. So in fact, it is showing that too, how much that interaction is happening. So I just really encourage you to really think about that and think about ways of across all the science to help you. So the part of it's for 21 guidance. So thank you all for your time, and you're welcome to reach out to us at your time. Our doors are open, so want to, you know, which is why I wanted this to happen now, so that you're comfortable to people. If I said to you, and dive into your question, I would say we have to come up with a budget that we think can work. And if we can add that in, then we add that in, but it would be hard to say that, you know, that's gonna go away. But if, you know, that's gonna make, so the valley will not be happy with that. Sure. You know, some of those aren't there, but if we have to make those decisions, we have to make those decisions. And we're asking you to put a budget together that means what the budget offices has to be, so that's, you know, kind of the push pulls that we have in the higher level to go. What do you do about it? You don't have this, you do that, so thank you for attending that. So thank you all. Have a good afternoon. Yes, I was, we adjourned the meeting at